Vasishta continued, Rama, I shall now tell you how the jiva, living soul, came to dwell in this body. The teaching of the Yoga Vasishta is that everything is one consciousness. It's not a philosophical teaching, it's an attempt to point out the underlying basis of all experience of being. And given that so, it's natural for the mind to then ask, well, if everything is the one being, the one consciousness, how come there's all this diversity? And Rama's quite concerned not just about how come there's all this diversity, but what about all the beliefs of Hindu cosmology? And one of these beliefs is the jiva, the living soul. And although it's a part of the Hindu belief system, it is something which has some relevance, I think, to us in the West. Because most of us have some idea of the soul, although we might not strictly believe in it. Some of us might strictly believe in that there is this immortal soul which either when we die it gets reborn. Some people might subscribe to that Hindu belief. If you're a Christian, well, you definitely believe you've got a soul, and when you die it lies in waiting until the final days where it will be I don't know, physically reincarnated or go to heaven or hell. But even if you don't believe in the soul, you believe in thought. And you somehow have this vague notion that there's a thinking being in here somehow engaging with this material world out there. We tend to, I think we do have a sort of sense of a ghost in the machine. Some kind of subtle inner reality which is somehow got to deal with and perhaps is at odds with an external physical reality. I think possibly most people in the modern West would subscribe to that idea of a sense of something vague inside them. And it comes up in the idea of ghosts as well. Ideas about astral projection. But to say, even if you don't believe in these things, there is this sense of something insubstantial interacting with the external world. So we could call that the jiva, perhaps. I should also point out that this belief is a Hindu belief. It isn't a Buddhist belief. There is no jiva in Buddhism. There is no soul in Buddhism. In Buddhism, there is they tend to believe in something called rebirth. It isn't that something gets reborn like a soul. It's not that the soul takes on a new body, life after life. It's more like a flame being passed on, something quite insubstantial. It's there's no permanent self in Buddhism. And sometimes people get a bit confused about what gets passed on. But you know, I was attempting to set up a home computing network recently, and you had to put the flash drive into one computer and then plug it into the router and then plug it into another computer. I was passing on information from one computer to the next. And in this age of information, which is so important and so unphysical, I mean, we live in a very unmaterial age. You know, even money is little more than an abstraction. It's all numbers. You know, our finances are in terms of numbers, abstract numbers. I do my banking online. I mean, what am I actually doing? I'm just typing in numbers. If you watch a DVD or listen to a CD, all that you've got in a CD and a DVD, it's just a bit of plastic. It's just a pattern of ones and zeros. It's information. You've got information stored in the forms of ones and zeros. We live in incredibly abstract times. And somehow we might find it difficult to accept that perhaps information could be passed from one birth to the next. Information. So I think it is worth considering how we've got this idea of a self, an individual self, which is somehow in contrast to the world in which it appears to find itself. So Vasishta says, I shall now tell you how the jiva came to dwell in this body. So there's definite belief there. And I'm sure if Vasishta was pressed, he would say, I will tell you how this belief arose, because there's no such thing as a jiva or body. These are just notions, conventions that we use to communicate with. The jiva thought, I am atomic in nature and stature, and so it became atomic in nature. So it seems to be that we're actually assuming the existence of the jiva here. Perhaps we could say the thought arose, I am atomic in nature and stature. And even the statement, I am atomic in nature and stature. What does this word atomic mean? We tend to think of it as something very small, but it's something, I think, fundamental. He's saying, I am atomic in nature and stature, so we're saying that there's something fundamental here. And it's got a certain stature or a certain form or shape. And so it became atomic in nature. Yet it only apparently became so on account of its imagination, which was false. Again, it's one of the things that of the Yoga Vasishta, that if you think something, it happens. This is something which will need to be explored, I think. For now, I think we can just take it as some kind of hypnosis, or perhaps like in a dream, there is thinking going on, and whatever you think about happens. It does seem to be talking about the dream state here a lot of the time. Have you noticed it in a dream when you're thinking about somebody and then suddenly you're talking to that somebody? So it's a way of describing things. It's a way of describing things how they are. It's a way of describing the suchness of things, of conveying the suchness of things. Even as one may dream that he is dead and that he has another body, this jiva, which in truth had an extremely subtle body of pure consciousness, now begins to identify itself with grossness, and so becomes gross. I'm not sure how much time I should spend on this really, because it's now saying that in truth the jiva had a subtle body of pure consciousness. We'll come across this later on in the story of Leela. The idea is that when you die, you do have this subtle body. But even, to say it's a subtle body of pure consciousness, well, even our physical body is of pure consciousness as well.